And Mario, Freilich and
Right.
Hanukkah.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello.
hi there.
Freiliche Chanukah.
A Freilich and Hanukkah to you as well.
Hello, everybody.
What's the Latka count?
Say it again.
What's your Latka count?
My what?
Never.
I didn't get it. Oh, that can count. No, none.
None.
Hi, Alan.
Hi, Mario.
Hello.
Hi.
Are we starting the new?
Yes,
Yes,
Volume.
number 12.
Okay. Volume 12 is starting tonight. This is dedicated to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Rabbi Menachem Schneerson's Zatzal volume. It's a big deal when they got that because there's a lot of Chabads that are now learning this.
Oh,
Okay, page 21. Mondays and Thursdays, as well as Rosh Chodesh, fast days, several holidays. The tefillah continues with Kriyas Torah. Remember, we just left off with Tachanun. I guess they're dealing with days of the week, not necessarily Shabbos. So the current volume is starting with Kriyas Torah because they're following that order. The footnote says the halachot that are more relevant to the Baal Koreh, as well as the halachot relevant to the Sefer Torah itself, are beyond the scope of these shiurim. And they give you this the Mara Makomos in Orach Chaim 135 to 146. There's also Sefer Tefillah Kilchosa, the Isha Yisrael, and other Mara Makomos. In the first two shiurim, we will study some of the numerous halachos related to the Torah reading, particularly those relevant to the congregation. When was Kriyas Torah instituted? The Gemara Baba Kama addresses this question. First states that Ezra enacted Kriyas Torah, but then concludes that it was already instituted in a more basic form by prophets among the Jewish people in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. Either way, it seems that the reason for the institution is so that the Jewish people would not go 3 days without Torah study. According to the Gemara, Ezra also decreed they should read the Torah at Mincha on Shabbat, which Rashi explains was for the benefit of those who may not hear the Torah reading during the week. Asura Takonos in Masechta Bava Kama Pei Beis Amud Aleph. Asura Takonos Tiken Ezra. Shekorim b'mincha b'Shabbos. Shekorim b'Sheni b'Chamishi that they read on Shabbos Mincha Monday and Thursday. V'Donin b'Sheni b'Chamishi. Bezdin adjudicated cases Monday and Thursday. Sheyu Korban Mincha b'Shabbos Mishum Yoshvei Kronos. And the takana to read Mincha b'Shabbos was because of people who are called Yoshvei Kronos, like people who sit in the marketplace. Maybe they couldn't come to shul Monday and Thursday because of that. Now, V'shiyukorim b'Sheni b'Chamishi Ezra Tikain. So the Gemara questions Ezra's place in enacting the takana of laning Monday and Thursday. This was an earlier takana, the Tanya. After Kriyas Yamsuf, it says, "V'halchu shloshes yamim b'midbar, v'lo matzu mayim, v'lo matzu mayim dorshe reshumos omru." Those that darshan said, "Ein mayim el Torah." Shneimar, heavy kol samei l'chulamai. Whoever is thirsty should go to water. Even shalchu shloshes yamim b'lo Torah, nilu. They became tired. Under Nevi'im shebeneim, so Nevi'im in that generation, tiknu lahem sheyikorim b'Shabbos umafsikim becha b'Shabbos. So they would lane on Shabbos, they would stop on Sunday, korin b'Sheni, lane again on Monday, mafsikin shlishi v'revi, stop on Tuesday and Wednesday, v'korin b'Chamishi, umafsikin erev Shabbos. They will never go more than 3 days without Torah. So there's a kasha. How could you say Ezra was Masakein? This was an earlier takana. So the Gemara explains that the original takana was one person to lane 3 psukim, or inami plus a gavri plus a psukim. Or 3 people would lane, each one would lane 1 pasuk. Keneged Kohanim Levim Yisraelim. Also, who Ezra came, Tikain plus a Gavri, Vasar Psuki Keneged Asra Batlanim. So he's the one who established that at a minimum, you have to lane 10 psukim, 3 people are called up. And there were 10 men that were called Batlanim, they didn't do anything except sit in the shul and learn Torah. Rashi, on this Gemara, when he explains what does it mean, Yishum Yoshvei Kronos, Yoshvei Chanios, Kol Yemosachol. These were people who ran storefronts every day of the week. Oiskin B'Schorven Korim B'Shvei V'Chamishi. They were too busy to come to shul to listen to laning. Tikkun B'Genayu Kriyas Torah. So an additional reading was established for them, which they said before was Mincha Shabbos. Let's see the footnote. It's difficult to understand how the enactment of Kriyas and Torah Shabbos afternoon solves the problem. They already heard the Torah reading Shabbos morning. And this doesn't help them with their inability to hear the Torah reading for 3 days during the week. The Nachlas Moshe, who asked this question and suggests that although an additional Torah reading on Shabbos does not rectify the original problem for which the enactment of Kriyas Torah in the week was instituted, it at least allows them to compensate partially for not observing that enactment, which must be kept in all situations due to low plug, not distinguishing between different cases, by hearing an additional Kriyas Torah. The Marsha here also, as well as the Meir and the Shita Mekubetzes, interpret Yoshvei Kronos here as individuals who may engage in inappropriate activities or become intoxicated on street corners on Shabbat afternoon due to boredom. The enactment encouraged them to attend shul instead to hear the Torah reading. The Rambam,
I think that's what Yoshvei Kronos means, because we
Yeah,
say that,
bumps.
don't we say that, yeah,
like
I mean, don't
bumps.
we say that in the Hadron? We say we're not like those
Yeah,
who,
the Yoshvei-
Kronos, who, who don't learn Torah, who hang out on corners.
Right, but there are other places in Shas where Yoshvei Kronos
Yeah.
refers to the shopkeepers.
Right.
Okay, but that's a very good reference, the fact that we say it in the Hadron, and there it goes more along with what the Marsha, the Meir, and the Shita Mekubetzes explain as what Yoshvei Kronos are. The Rambam has a different chronology. He describes the evolution of the decrees regarding Torah reading, basing himself upon the Gemara. According to the Rambam, Moshe Rabbeinu himself, like when it says Nevi'im Shebeineim, the Rambam is going to learn that it was Moshe Rabbeinu instituted the practice of Kriyas Torah. The Rambam also adds some additional details, such as what we read, how many verses we read, how many people read them, which he notes was also included in the Takana of Ezra. The Rambam says in Hilchos Tefillah, Moshe Rabbeinu Tikei Lem Yisrael Sheyukorim b'Torah b'Rabim, that there would be a public reading of Torah, b'Shabbos, Sheni v'Chamishi b'Shachris, Kidei shelo yishu shlosh yamim b'lo shmiras Torah. They shouldn't go 3 days without hearing Torah. V'Ezra Tikein Sheyukorim Kain b'Mincha b'Chol Shabbos mishum Yoshvei Kronos. That they established a reading Shabbos afternoon. V'gamu tikein sheyukorim b'sheni v'chamishi shlosh b'nei adam v'lo yikaru pachos masar psukim. Again, the Rambam codifies that Ezra was the one who said we need to have 3 aliyahs and at least 10 psukim. The Mishnah Brura, based on the Yerushalmi, notes that Moshe Rabbeinu also instituted the practice of Kriyas Torah and Yom Tov, Rosh Chodesh, and Chol HaMoed. Well, Yerushalmi Isa, says the Mishnah Brura, Moshe tikid lam l'Yisrael sheyukorim b'Torah b'Shabbosos v'Yamim Tovim u'v'Rosh Chodesh u'v'Chol Shel Moed. It should be noted that the Yerushalmi, in the continuation, states that Ezra enacted the Kriyas Torah of Monday and Thursday as well, which contradicts the passage in Baba Kama cited above from the Bavli, which attributes this to the prophets in the time of Moshe. Nevertheless, many Rishonim explain that the Yerushalmi and the Bavli don't argue. Rather, the initial takana for Monday and Thursday was instituted by the prophets in earlier times, but Ezra formalized the number of aliyot required on those days 3, as the Bavli concluded in the passage quoted above. Given that Moshe Rabbeinu instituted the original practice of Kriyas Torah, should it be considered a mitzvah d'oraisa? According to Tosfos, Kriyas Torah is still considered a rabbinic mitzvah. Tosfos Megillah, Yud Zayin Amud Beis, where it says Kol HaTorah b'chol lashon nemra, Pirush HaKuntris, Shenitra likros b'chol lashon, Sherotza likros b'Sefer Torah. Rashi over there says it refers to the mitzvah of Kriyas Torah, that it can be read in any language. But Vikasha, says Tosfos, Shari Kriyas Torah Edim and Torah M'Rabanan, Levad me Parshat Zachor Daviraisa. Like Parshat Zachor is one of the 4 special parshas that Chazal enacted to read around the month of Adar. According to many opinions, including Tosfos, there's a biblical obligation for every individual to hear the reading of Parshat Zachor, which commands us to remember the attack of Amalek in the wilderness. The Gemara states that the Tanoim disagree as to whether one may read portions of the Torah in any language or only in Hebrew, and attempts to derive the answer from Psukim. According to Rashi, the issue is at hand is whether one may fulfill Kriyas Torah in other languages. But Tosfos questions that the mitzvah is only rabbinic, so it's difficult to understand how the Gemara could cite Psukim in this context. By contrast, the Bach writes that Kriyas Torah is considered to have the status of the D'oraisa Dika mitzvah, And he takes issue with the position of Tosfos. This is the Bach commentary on the tour. Ikalit Mo Nami, he says it's a wonder to be Tzurba M'Rabanan Babakama. Amru Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom tiken b'midbar sheyikorim b'Torah, that Moshe made the original takana. Ela shabai Ezra v'tiken tlosa. Ezra said 3 people. Uvishalmi in Megillah. Nami ita Moshe tiken lem Yisrael sheyikorim b'Torah b'Shabbos v'yamim tovim Rosh Chadoshim v'chol shel moed. Shneimar vayidaber Moshe smodei Hashem b'nei Yisrael u'mevio harif b'perek hakore oimid. Says the Bach Hashlefi Zevadai. Therefore, the Bach says, when you lay on Shabbos, it's Minat Torah. Kepirish Rashi, El Shaloya Seder Miyuchad, L'chol Kriya Milvad Parshas Zocher. There wasn't a specific order except Parshas Zocher. Uba Ezra V'tikin HaSeder L'chol HaKriyos. And he's the one who put the order together. V'afilu Fizeh, nearer the Tzorch Lizor Tfei B'Parshas Zocher, Shei Mitzvah Miyuchedes. He still says, even though every Shabbos is Doraisa, we should be more careful with Parshas Zocher. It's only an or halach l'Moshe Misinai. It's not written like Parshas Zocher is written. That's what the Bach says. The Piskei Teshuvos writes that most Achronim rule that even though Moshe indeed instituted the practice, it's defined as D'Rabbanan, and it's not Doraisa. Say that the Piskei Teshuvos says, "V'apidivra abachi v'akri b'shavos yatav v'midin Torah." Shari Moshe Rabbeinu tikna. Omnam shar g'doylei apoiskim chalku alav. The Avsha Moshe Rabbeinu tikna nechshavos l'divrei soifrim ukitakonas neviim. He brings the Birkei Yosef, the Prima Godim, who are of that opinion. Okay. Who is Galaxy S10?
I don't know.
Okay. Page 25.
Only spying from another chabura.
Welcome, Galaxy S10. So is Kriyas Torah an obligation upon the tzibur or the yachid? The Rishonim Achronim discuss a fundamental question concerning the nature of Kriyas Torah. Is the obligation of Kriyas Torah coming upon the yachid? The nafkamina would be, if you missed a Shabbos, you might have to make it up if it's a personal chiyuv, or only upon a tzibur. The Raven indicates that the obligation is imposed upon each individual. The Raven you can see is an early Rishon in Mainz. Shalani Achi Rav Chizkiah. His brother Rav Chizkiah asked him, "Akar b'Torah lama omer l'tzibur baruch was Hashem ha'mavodah." The one who's called up for Aliyah, why does he call out to the tzibur, bless Hashem? Yivarech birchas haTorah v'day. Let him say the regular birchas haTorah. Sheket Yishad mitzvah zedvar lasik b'divrei Torah. Bishavti lo, he answered him. L'fi she'ezra tiken l'Yisrael shikorim b'Torah b'beis v'hei v'Shabbos. Ezra made the takana to read Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos. V'akar b'Torah moitzis atzibur dechovasan mikriya. The one who lanes, or the one who's getting the aliyah laning, he's moitzi the tzibur on their choiv of kriya. Leficha chareu oimer l'tzibur atem shreich levarich v'likros kamoini. That when the person gets up and gets an aliyah and he says baruch hu, he's reminding the tzibur, listen, you have to be mavarich and read with me. Taskimu likriyasi lebirchasi, agree to my kriya and my bracha v'tavarchu me. Ve'im oinim u'mvarchim. We say baruch Hashem mevarach l'amvat, right? We answer the baruch hu. U'lekulam samchu chachamim shetiknu mi Moshe. Everyone relied on the takon of Moshe. Shamar ki shem Hashem ekra. When you call out Hashem's name, atem havu gadol lokenu. Give praise, u'tavarcheu iti. And like as Moshe was saying, and bless Hashem with me. according to the Ravan, reciting Baruch Hu before each Aliyah is the method by which the Oleh, the one who sends to the Torah to receive an Aliyah, tells the congregation that they must read like him, and he will fulfill the obligation on their behalf. This essentially shows that the obligation is upon the individual, and everyone needs intent to fulfill it through listening to Baruch Hu and the bracha before the reading. In contrast to the Ravan, the Ramban writes in Milchemes Hashem that Kriyas HaTorah is not an individual obligation, but it's a communal obligation. Omer HaKosev, Hashnuim b'mishtaseinu kulam choivus hatzibur hein. Everything listed in this Mishnah is an obligation on the tzibur. Ve'enan ela b'muchuyavin b'davar. And the ones who are obligated in the tzibur, aval Megillah, Hashem shat tzibur chayev kach kol yachid v'yachid chayev. This is in contradistinction to Megillah, that by Megillah, just as the tzibur is obligated, the individual is obligated. The Ramban, in context, is responding to the Baal Amor, another Rishon, who claims that when reading the Megillah for Purim, prior to the 14th of Adar, it is not absolutely necessary to read it with a minyan if none is available. The Baal Amor supports his contention by citing the Mishnah Megillah 23b, which lists a number of mitzvot that require a minyan, including Birchas Kohanim and Kriyas HaTorah, but omits mention of reading the Megillah. The Baal Amor claims that this indicates 10 are not required for Megillah, even when recited prior to the date of Purim. However, the Ramban argues that all the mitzvahs mentioned in the Mishnah are obligations upon the tzibur, and not only upon every individual. Therefore, Megillah may still require a minyan when recited before Purim, but it remains an obligation upon each individual to gather a minyan for this purpose, which is why it is not listed in the Mishnah together with the other mitzvahs that are obligatory upon the tzibur alone and not on the yachid. So they're making a distinction to say that Kriyas HaMegillah is a chiyuv both on the yachid and the tzibur, but the other ones are just an obligation on the tzibur. So as indicated by the Ramban, since Kriyas HaTorah appears within the Mishnah's list of communal obligations, it is not to be understood as a universal personal obligation. Rav Moshe Sternbuch, the Tshuvas Vanogos, the Moadim Uzmanim, arrives at the same conclusion. As he explains in the Tshuvas Vanogos, that a person is not required to make up words from the Torah reading if he missed them. And this seems to be the opinion of the majority of Achronim. See the Piskei Tshuvos, who states definitely that this is the majority opinion, and cites numerous Achronim, such as the Noda B'Yehuda, Aruch HaShulchan, and the Imre Yosher, as holding that Kriyas HaTorah is a chiyuv only on the tzibur. Sheila. Question. Yachid shelo shama kama tevos b'kriyas HaTorah. Im chayav lishmoa b'makom acher. If a person didn't hear some of the words in the Kriyas HaTorah, does he have to go to another shul and pick up another laning because he missed those words? Tshuva. Be'ikar achiyuv Kriyas HaTorah eveti b'makom acher divrei HaKodesh HaRizal b'sefer HaKavonos shezman meruba ispalu etzlo tzibur lo shamu Kriyas HaTorah, that there was people davening with him privately. He didn't have a Sefer Torah, and they davened with him without Kriyas HaTorah. Shaya b'golus v'lo b'mkomo v'lo tilta Sefer Torah, let's say. So he didn't take a Sefer Torah with him. The daitoi mashma she'ena chiyuv kol kach liyachid. The chiyuv is not on the individual person, but called tzibur chayav and likro. If you have a minyan of Jews and you've gathered to daven, part of that chiyuv is Kriyas HaTorah on Monday and Thursday, and then on the days that you have to lay. You have, if you're at home There's no chiyuv that you have to read the Torah out of a chumash or out of a sefer Torah, whatever, as part of your tefillah. The Kriyas Torah is established through the minyan. Tzibur shalobim komo leka chiyuva. Right? If the tzibur is not in its regular place, like those that were visiting the Arizal where there was no Torah, there's no obligation. Ayin b'mogen Avram u'birkas Yosef. V'yachid shemitztarf mekayma mitzvah. Now, if a yachid is mitztarf to that minyan, he's mekayma mitzvah. Av yisodo chiyuv l'tzibur. The obligation to lane is on the congregation. L'chein b'shulchan aruch kuf mem vav ita shem yesh asara l'tzaisi muter lilmod kishetaraso umnasa. So somebody who's in koilel means he makes his parnasa learning Torah. If there's 10 other men listening, he doesn't have to listen because it's not a personal chiyuv. And then they say that they'll discuss this in part 2 of the Hilchos Kriyas Torah, because they're going to say over there that in general it's better not to, that you need 10 people listening, and that those people should be listening and not learning Torah. Continues the Rav Sternbuch. Lefize nireh she'av kol echad tzorach lishtatev b'tzibur sheni v'chamishi v'shabbosa shekar b'Torah. So every individual needs to be mishtatev with the tzibur. Kedei litzarf l'tzibur she's kaimat hakon likro b'tzibur, so that the tzibur would be able to lane. V'chorim mitfila b'tzibur ba'alma. That's din is more stringent than joining the tzibur for tefillah, which didn't have the same kind of authoritative rabbinic decree as we just went through, Ezra, Moshe Rabbeinu, right? She'eno takonos chazal kamohu. Tefillah is not as stringent as the takona, as Kriyas Torah. She said Kriyas Torah b'sheva chamishi tikna Ezra. Mikol mokom b'nitzarf l'tzibur lo shama hakol. So if you join the tzibur and they're reading and you didn't hear everything, shuvein latricho midai. You don't have to trouble. He doesn't have to trouble himself. She is so that takona kayim kishin itzraf l'tzibur shekoin v'itad l'shma. If the tzibur is laning and he bent his ear to listen, that's what he needed to do. There was some noise or something happened. He didn't hear everything. He was not over the takana. We didn't tell. They were not machayev special tircha to go to another shul and listen. I annoyed cotton. She's followed b'yichidus k'shemesa nasi. When the nasi died, people daven b'yichidus. Only bola beis hakneses l'kriyas Torah levad called tzibur chayovim. They came together on Monday and Thursday for Kriyas Torah because that's definitely a chiyuv on the tzibur. Ayin sham heitev shezeu raya nifla. He wants to say this is a very strong proof. Shekriyas Torah chamor v'chayovim l'tzraf l'tzibur, and there's a chiyuv to be mitzvah to make the tzibur so they can lane. Ulefi zeh b'nidon she'ela shalanu. In our question, shechiser kama tevos b'shei v'chamishi. He missed some words Tuesday, Monday and Thursday. V'lo shama tesha pshukim shleimim or shabbosos. Or he didn't hear the 9 psukim or on Shabbos. Nirashim nitzarf l'tzibur. If he gathered with the tzibur, he listened with his ear. Ovid kitakon Ezra. He fulfilled takon Ezra. Va'av shenenes v'alkaim kol mitzvah. Al zeh achinu chayim kol kach. It's not such a chiyuv chomer if he didn't fulfill every word. V'yashim esum miyad gam bal peh. He can finish them bal peh. Lo bitel ikar takon l'tzarf l'tzibur l'hatos ozen lishmoach. Ulefi zeh ikar takon rak l'tzibur. The Ikar Takana is for the tzibur to read it. The Yachid Chovaso Lishtatif L'Tzibur V'Yotze Chiyuvo. The Yachid's Chiyuv is to be Mishtatif with the Tzibur. V'Vach V'Yasiach B'Zod and Daito. Lo Lishmo Sha'az Ki Lo Ni Mishtatif Klal. He shouldn't be doing something else during Kriyas Torah, taking his mind off of it, because then he was not Mishtatif. U'Kumidmeni, he thinks, Shekena Mina L'Hakel Kishlo Yotze V'Ya B'Fnim El Shechitzu Lishmo Kamatevois. He thinks this is the custom, to be makel. When a person was inside, missed some of the words. If when there are some people, if they missed hearing some words and they run to another shul, Rav Sternbach isn't 100% sure that that's required. That's why he says tzarich bir. He says those people need to explain themselves why they're doing that. On the other hand, a minority of poskim disagree and maintain that Kriyas Torah is an obligation upon every individual. That was the position of Chaim Soloveitchik, as related by Rav Hershel Schachter in his book on Tefillah, in the name of Yoshe Ber. There were occasions when Rav Soloveitchik would travel to New York from Boston on a Monday morning and was unable to hear Kriyas Torah before he left. After he finished delivering a shiur, he would ask whether there was anyone else who had not heard Kriyas Torah that morning, and he would make a minyan for mincha that included that day's Kriyas Torah. The Rav's practice of fulfilling Kriyas Torah later in the day was based on the position of his grandfather, Rav Chaim Brisker, that Kriyas Torah is not a chayvus tzipur, an obligation that devolves only on the tzipur, but does not obligate the individual. Instead, Rav Chaim held that Kriyas Torah is a chayvus hayochid, an obligation incumbent on every individual, with the caveat that it can be filled only in the presence of a minyan. Like, he can put on tefillin at home, and we're Makayim mitzvahs tefillin. We don't need a tzibur to Makayim our personal mitzvah of tefillin. But says Rav Yoshe Ber that we have an obligation to hear Kriyas Torah, but that obligation can't be fulfilled at home. I need to go and be with a minyan to hear Kriyas Torah. Accordingly, when Rav Chaim would travel by train to rabbinic conventions and was unable to hear Kriyas Torah in the morning, he would gather a minyan in the afternoon for Kriyas Torah. Rav Soloveitchik recounted that once in his youth, he traveled from Pruzhan. By the way, Pruzhan was the Rav Moshe Feinstein's family was from there, and Rav Yoshe Ber and the Feinsteins, I think, were related. He traveled from Pruzhan to Brisk to visit his grandfather, Rav Chaim. Before he left, his maternal grandfather, Rav Elio Feinstein, right? That's Rav Moshe's ancestor. So Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, Rav Chaim's son, had married Rav Leo Feinstein's daughter. And he showed him a comment of the Rambam that seems to say explicitly that Kriyas Torah is only a chovas hatzibur, not a chovas hayachid, against the view of Chaim. Rav Feinstein asked him to show the Ramban to Rav Chaim. That's the Ramban we learned tonight. Rav Chaim examined the Ramban, explained his words in a different way, according to which the Ramban actually supported the opinion. Later, Rav Leo Pruzhner remarked that Rav Chaim mit zayin azenem ivre, mit zayin eisenem ivre, eisen like a very strong Hebrew, was able to reinterpret the simple meaning of the Ramban. See also Divrei Arav, where this issue is mentioned. See the Rav Tzvi Reisman, Ratzka Tzvi, 1-3 in the continuation of the piece cited below, who suggests a somewhat different understanding of the practice of Rav Chaim. I'll have to show this to Tzvika that he was quoted here. Rav Moshe Feinstein also holds that the obligation of Kriyas Torah is imposed upon every individual. Let's go through the secrets, Moshe. B'davar Kriyas Torah vadai shetzorach kol adam lishmo kol hakriya shelo yechzer lo av teva achas shelo sham. He starts right off the bat to say the individual has to listen to the whole laning and can't miss a word. B'di'evet im chaser teva achas u'posek echad im akriyu b'shem chamishi u'mincha b'shabes v'af kriyat yontif. So, b'di'evet toluyim hu rak b'kriyat the gimel psukim lo yotza. It depends if whether or not the fact that there has to be 3 psukim read at one time. Since if he missed one word, it's as if, so if there's only 3 psukim read, and he missed one of the words of one of the pasuk, so it's as if he only read 2 psukim. So on any of the days, whether it's Monday, Thursday, Yontif, Mincha b'Shabbos, or anything like that, Kriya b'Yontif, if that aliyah has more than 3 psukim, so he's Yotza. If he missed a word in one of the other psukim, because he has 3 to take care of him. But Rav Moshe makes a distinction of a B'Kriya Parsha de Shabbos. Harei levad chiyuv shmiya zayin kruyin. He has to listen to 7 aliyahs. Shemitzad zeh mayu zayin kruyin af b'miktzas mea parsha kvua yotza. Let's say they read only the part of the parsha. You would still be yotzei. U'memela yagam ken chiluk ben kriya de gimel psukim lekriya de harbe psukim. Then therefore, there might be a difference if one of the aliyahs was only 3 psukim versus many. Ikomokom hayechshelo apasuk shadilik bo ateva. Right, he would lose out the pasuk that he missed the words in. Koshken kishlo shama pasuk shalom. Or for example, he didn't hear a whole pasuk. Shekadimi tzad mine kavua kachol ha'olam ligmor sator b'chol shana v'shana. There's a minig that we finish the Torah every year. Ach she'en lo etzel is that tzibur lo matrachin lachzor on apam b'shvil yechidim. He can't solve it because we don't cause the congregation to lane it over because some few people heard it. Let's say there was 10 people who hadn't heard words or psukim. There won't be any tircha after the davening. With a bracha, they should read the psukim that they didn't hear. Umitam zeh, she'efshar lachzor tzarach kol echad lishtadel lishmo kol hakriya v'lo yachziyum lishmo av teva achas. So Rav Moshe is being very stringent here, requiring that you listen to every word. Right? So it seems from the sources we have seen that there are at least 2 practical applications of this machlokes as to whether or not Kriyas Torah is a choivus hayochid or choivus hatzibur. If it's an obligation upon the congregation, one does not need kavanah to fulfill the mitzvah when listening to the Torah reading, nor does the reader or one receiving the aliyah require intent to fulfill the obligation for the others. If it's an obligation upon the congregation, then someone who missed hearing a few words, like he was distracted or spoke, does not need to make up what he missed. But if it's an obligation upon the individual, then in principle, he must make up what he missed, though it's not usually practical to do so. Another source that appears to be relevant to this question is a passage in Moed Katan discussing the laws of mourning, avelis, for a nasi who passes away. Nasi shemes, bote midrashas kulam betelim. You close the yeshivas. Uvnei hakneses nechnasim lebeis hakneses. People go into the shul, v'karin shiva v'yotzim, and they get 7 aliyahs, and then people daven at home. Nasi refers to the head of the Sanhedrin. like Rabbi Yehuda Nossi. Rashi explains that in this case, the congregation does not pray with a minyan in shul due to the mourning for the Nasi who died, but they must gather for Kriyas HaTorah, right? Kohen Shiva b'Sefer Torah Demis Palam Yachad Beis HaKnesses. Because of the mourning, we want people not to daven together in shul. El kol echad echad mispal b'veiso, it's a siman of avelis, but they had to gather for the laying. So Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach infers from here that the obligation of Kriyas HaTorah is imposed upon the individual because even though each person prays alone in his home, they are all obligated to go to the shul to read the Torah. However, in the end, he rejects the proof because this source may simply show that the community must ensure that a Kriyas HaTorah takes place. You can't, abolish the shul completely. Rosh Zalman also suggests another proof from the Ramban that Kriyas HaTorah is an obligation upon the individual. The Rambam. The Rambam in Hilchos Tefillah says, Shmona Psukim Shebesof HaTorah, right, where it says, Vayamos Moshe, that's the first pasuk of the 8, where it says Moshe died. So there's a debate who wrote those. Some say Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it with tears. Others say Yoshua wrote it. So that's why there's this whole discussion about these last 8 psukim. Shmona psukim shebesof HaTorah muter likros v'som v'eis hakneses b'pachos masor. He says you can lay these even with less than 10 people. Aval pi shakol toirahi. It's all Torah. Moshe mepi gvura onram. Hoyel umashmon. The concept is Shem Achar Misas Moshe. Harei Nishtanu. They're just different. Ulefichach muter liyochel likro hisa. According to the Rambam, it means it's not required when reading the last 8 psukim of the Torah because they describe the events following the death of Moshe Rabbeinu. The Ravid, as usual, gets very upset with the Rambam. He disagrees with the Rambam and claims that a minyan of 10 is necessary to read these psukim. The Ravid says, "Lo shamanu davar zeh me'oy." I never heard of such a thing.
Typical Ravid. He doesn't mince words when he's criticizing the Rambam.
Say it again.
It's a typical Ravid. He doesn't mince words when he's criticizing the Rambam. That's his style.
But you never know what to expect from him. Right? He'll use different phraseology. Here he says, never heard of such a thing. That's basically what he's saying. Lo shamanu davar zeh me'olam. Where did he get that? Says the Ravid. Masha anu yachid koira oisan. Loy marsha eno mafsik bahem. That means one person should have the whole aliyah of the 8 psukim. You shouldn't put 2 aliyahs within the 8 psukim. And that's what's mentioned beferish in the Megillah. He says in our location, oilim likros pator hu levado koire, ve'ena chazon kore imo. The oiler should read this, and not the bal koire. Umasha kosev hu inyan zorus hu ma'od. The Rambam, whatever the Rambam is writing is very strange. Where did Tzibur go all of a sudden? Meaning, before you laid the final 8 psukim, that was regular Torah. You needed a full minyan. So what happened? They disappeared? They walked out?
For Kiddush.
Right? It's Simchas Torah, Mario. They want their kiddush.
For the Kiddush club.
So the Kesef Mishnah, who is Rav Yosef Karo, Rav Yosef Karo wrote a Perush on the Rambam that foreshadows a lot of what he says in Shulchan Aruch. Offers the following explanation to respond to the Rabban's final question as to where did the congregation went. He suggests that perhaps one stepped out, or that there were only 9 in the shul at that point. Umasha Kosov Shuinian Zarus. You could see Rav Karo is trying to defend the Rambam. He's his fellow Sfardi. Yesh loymar the mishkachos lo shuas service haknes. So one guy went to the bathroom. Or shalayu beis haknes is alates, and there were only 9 left. According to the Kesef Mishnah, the Rambam is saying that if the Torah reading for these last 8 verses began with the minyan, but one person left in the middle, or there were only 9, it's permitted to complete these psukim with less than minyan. So therefore, Rav Shlomo Zalman proves from the Kesef Mishnah's second explanation of Rambam that Kriyas Torah is an obligation upon the individual as well as the tzipur. It should be noted that the first scenario suggested by the Kesef Mishnah, but one of the 10 left in the middle of the Torah reading before these psukim were read, is difficult to understand. According to the Yerushalmi cited as the halacha by the Shulchan Aruch, one would always be permitted to continue reading the Torah in such a case if 6 individuals remain, so long as the meaning was present at the start of the reading, regardless of which section of the Torah was being read. See the Yalkut Biyurim of the Mesivta of the Gemara, Menachos 30, where this difficulty is noted. The editor there proposes that Rambam's case is one in which fewer than 6 men remained. That's how the Rav Yitzchak Zev Soloveitchik, the Brisker Rav in Yerushalayim, who died in 1960. That's how he explains. Says the Alicha Shloimoi, L'chora Kasha, the Apasor lo be'ina b'shmona psukim abal. Right, you don't need 10. Aval mikol makom, sham ikir chiyuv kriyas haTorah hu rak al hatzibur, v'lo hayachid. Ve'ech yikra'u tam hayachid bivracha. How will a yachid make the bracha? There's no meaning. Rav Shlomo Zalman therefore argues that the fact that these 8 psukim may be recited together with the standard brachos recited on the Torah reading shows that Kriyas Torah is an obligation upon the individual as well. Here, Rav Tzvi Reisman rejects this argument in his Sefer Ratz Katzvi. Ulam l'chu'ura yesh lidchos rayazu shekain hi gufa l'shmona psukim shebesof haTorah yesh din v'chiyuv acher mishar psuki Kriyas Torah. He wants to say that there is no proof, because those 8 psukim we've said has a whole different chiyuv from other psukim. So he rejects Shlomo Zalman Auerbach's attempt to prove that the chiyuv is on the yachid from this episode about the 8 psukim.
Actually, a question. I mean, it's so obvious what Tzvika is saying, that's the whole point, that these 8 psukim are different. How could you try to learn that out when a klal, a general rule, when that's the whole point of the Gemara, is that these 8 psukim are different?
Exactly.
It's hard to understand.
Very hard to understand. What about women? Are they required to hear Kriyas Torah? We saw in the previous section that even according to the majority opinion that Kriyas Torah is an obligation upon the tzibur, it is still proper for each individual to try to hear the Kriyas Torah if possible. Is this true for women? The Mogen Avraham writes that women are obligated to listen to Kriyas Torah on Shabbos in the same manner as men. But he acknowledges that women in his community did not have this practice. Mashra Mikan, from Megillah, the Isha Chayav is a Shmo Kriyas Torah. The whole, remember, we learned that Klal Yisrael shouldn't go 3 days without learning Torah. So, women are not obligated. Right? The mitzvah that once every 7 years the Melech would read the Torah, even women and the children would come. Lot says chutza. He says in his community the women went out. The Mogen Avraham deduces his conclusion from the fact that according to the Gemara, women may in principle receive an aliyah. Though practically the Gemara says this is not done because of Kovod HaTzibur. The Mogen Avram also, in the continuation of the piece, also cites support for his position from a ruling in Maseches Soifrim that women are obligated in listening to the reading of the Sefer like men, and it should be translated for them so they'll understand it. Now, why did women go outside in the time of Mogen Avram? The reason for this is because women of the time often did not understand the Chumash and would not have been able to follow along anyway. In contrast, many Achronim rule that since Kriyas Torah is considered a communal obligation according to the majority opinion, women are entirely exempt since they are not part of the minyan. And that's the position of the Aruch HaShulchan. Veneerly the lav chiyuv gomer. It's not a real strong chiyuv. The fact that you only lane Monday, Thursday, Shabbos, whatever, it's a mitzvah tied to time, or the Rosh Chodesh, or Chol HaMoed, it's all time. Maybe most of the mitzvahs hakel mitzvah, tzivzat Torah hakel sa'am anoshim v'anoshim. There, the Torah specifically said women are required. Shazui mitzvah miyuchedes pa'al sheva shonim, once every 7 years. Sh'aya melech ba'atzmo kor sefer mishnah Torah, that the melech would read sefer dvorim, shem divrei kvushim, like a toichacha. That's a wonder statement for whoever said that they're chayiv to listen at every Shabbos. We see daily practice. Women don't come to shul Monday, Thursday, and they don't come necessarily Shabbos. Most of the time they can't even hear. They're not, they're in a Ezra's Nashim that's very far away, whatever. Rav Hershel Schachter comments that even those who exempt women from Kriyas Torah would agree that if they do attend, they receive schar for coming, like any other time Ba'al Mitzvahs. See also Halichas Bas Yisrael, citing Rav Yoshev, that nowadays it is proper for women to listen to Kriyas Torah, since they do understand the words, as opposed to earlier periods in history. However, Rav Yoshev rules that if a woman arrives late to shul, can either daven Shachris before the Sosman Tefillah, or listen to Kriyas Torah, they should daven Shachris and not listen to the Kriyas Torah. It says the Rav Shechter, those who dispute the Mogen Avram and say that women are not chayv, mikol makom, ilu bala beis hakneses hayu makaimus akol panim mitzvahs Kriyas Torah b'Torah's ein mitzvah voice. Just like a woman is not mechuyev in shaking the lulav, but if she takes the lulav and shakes it, she gets schar. So Rav Shechter is saying it's not any worse than that. Okay. Any final comments or questions or issues?
It's really hard to understand the theory that, or the shita that, if you don't hear the entire Kriyas Torah on Shabbos, you have to make it up. Although, because you have to go to the bathroom. It's not like a short kriya that you certainly, especially if you do a lot of mishaberachs and all the other tefillas that are done, it's a certain percentage of the population is going to have to go out. That's just the reality of life.
Right. Well, it seemed like Rav Moshe was pretty machmir there.
Right.
But the general tenor of the other poskim, certainly Rav Sternbuch seemed to suggest that if you missed a few words or there, it was not the end of the world for the Yochid.
I think even Rav Moshe agrees that if it's not just 3 psukim, if it's a reading on Shabbos, it's okay. I mean, if you can, you get together afterward, but if not, not. So
right.
In that situation, it's okay because it's just not practical to do it any other way.
Now, I would like to make a suggestion that we learn next Monday night, if possible, because my wife and I are going to Israel to celebrate the bar mitzvah of my grandson, Zachariah Polavoy. I'm leaving next Tuesday morning, so I'm not going to be around Tuesday night, but I am around Monday night. So we could just move it to Monday night.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll send a we'll send missives around 8 o'clock. We'll do the daf that night at 7:30, and like we normally do, and we'll do the Tzurba Monday night.
Right.
And I might be, the following Tuesday, we might can do it like based on the time. I used to teach when I was in Israel in the morning. So we'll probably do the following Tuesday as well. Just I'm on the plane Tuesday. That's gonna be too difficult.
Monday is also, just to note, a legal holiday, so.
Right, so I'm not working that day either.
Very
Okay,
good. Okay, Mazel
Have a
tov.
good- have a good week.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
Good weekend.
Thank you. Have a freiliche Hanukkah, everybody.